a beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbing Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiochendu. It's our final show in the month of September, the month when we expect to get ministers for Nigeria. I think we have 3 days to go before Mr. President's promise passes. Hopefully, he does meet that between Monday and Wednesday. We are going to be talking about that, of course, and all the things that have happened in Nigeria in the last week. And I have here with me someone who's going to do that justice. Mr. Demola Rewaju is here with me. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you very much, Ebuka.
Yeah, let's start off with the ministers now. We don't know. Mr. President necessarily gave us a timeline. He just said September, then at some point he said the end of September, which could be any time. Wednesday is pretty much the last day for that. Do you think he's going to meet it?
Well, I think, to be frank, I think Mr. President has made it clear through the infamous body language that he does not want to appoint ministers. In France, in US, he said he was going to appoint ministers in September. In France, he said it was going to be at the end of September. And also in France, he said that ministers are noisemakers, that civil servants are the ones who do the work. And then he said, yes, he said September, but September has come too soon. So I'm not so certain, especially with the Senate, with the crisis in the Senate, which I think would escalate during this week. I don't see how we would have a cabinet in place by the end of this month. Of course, even if he submits the list, I do not see it being passed. I do not see us having a Federal Executive Council at the end of this month in 3 days.
Why don't you think the Senate is going to pass it?
I'm saying it cannot be passed in 1 day. We are talking about...
he didn't necessarily say we're going to have ministers. He said he was going to give a list.
At a point in time, he did say he was going to have a cabinet at the end of September. So clearly that cabinet is not going to come up at the end of September. It's possible he sends that list, to the Senate under Senate President Bukola Saraki. But I think, again, that the body language of the president is really against the appointment of ministers.
Why do you think that is, though? Because a lot of people are starting to wonder. I mean, it's like I've always said on this show, ministers have not necessarily been a big deal for Nigerians.
Yes.
But this long wait has made it such a big deal because people are now wondering why is it. It's become a little curious for a lot of people. Why do you think that is the case with him?
Well, I think because, first of all, the All Progressive Congress told us that they were ready for governance, and then they had said that they were going to form a parallel government if they lost the election. Now, for a government that said it was going to form a parallel government to now be in government and not be able to form a substantive government, I mean, it makes it glaring to people that perhaps, these people were more suited to opposition than actual governance and administration. And then again, you look at the person of Mr. President. Some people have been making allusions to the fact that when he was in power, he preferred to run Nigeria through super permanent secretaries. That was the era of super permanent secretaries. You had civil servants who were bureaucrats who were at the helm of affairs. So I think, that's why it's becoming much of a big deal to Nigerians presently.
People have started talking about the legality of a lot of things. We saw him in the United Nations in the past week, and right beside him was former governor of Ekiti State, who is not a government official, pretty much. Yes. And people are starting to wonder, are those things legal where you take people who are not members of any cabinet or members of your government to sit in such important meetings or forums or seminars or whatever? Are there any legal issues around those things now?
Well, I do not think there are strict legal issues because we really do not know what exactly goes on behind closed doors in those places. But there is definitely a moral or an ethical dilemma somewhere where you have people who are not substantive government officers speaking on behalf of the government. I mean, somebody raised the issue yesterday that Mr. President missed the Nigerian delegation in the UN, missed a side meeting of that had to do with Boko Haram, and the only person who could speak on behalf of the government was former Governor Kayode Fayemi, and people on social media asked him the question that in what capacity are you speaking on behalf of this government? You are not even an appointee of the government. So yes, it might not be a legal problem, it might not be a constitutional problem, but there is definitely a moral and ethical problem with that.
Well, we're going to be waiting Wednesday. Like you said, I mean, the Senate doesn't sit until Tuesday most times. So even if the list is submitted, they might have to start sitting from Tuesday or Wednesday. So Thursday is a public holiday, and that's October already. So it's going to be an interesting week. But hopefully he does meet the promise that he made. But speaking of the Senate now, Senate President Bukola Saraki was in the news, of course, this week with his trial, the Code of Conduct Tribunal, which started off on being live on TV and then got shut off at some point. And There's been a lot of stories around that, but it's been adjourned till sometime in October. That case is very interesting because he did deny all the charges. It's basically his word or their word against his and all of that. How do you think that's going to pan out eventually?
Well, I think for me, I am totally in support of the fact that there is the rule of law is being established. My fears are the bigger implication for democracy. We might have a crisis in the Senate on our hands, you know. A number of senators went with the Senate president to the Code of Conduct Tribunal, thereby showing their support for him. Now, it may be all politics, but at the same time, do you want to have such a crisis? Do you want to have a Senate crisis this early in the government? I would think not. Whatever it is, Nigerians expect that the APC should bring a measure of seriousness, should bring the same measure of urgency with which they campaigned. Let them bring it now into government. I mean, Nigerians are tired of politics. We've had almost 2 years of politics, you know, the campaigns, formation of APC, and so on and so forth. I think Nigerians want to actually feel the impact. If Saraki is the Senate president, then let him be the Senate president. One is not surprised that some people are already saying, you know, I'm hearing it being said, that the Senate president should resign before Mr. President submits the ministerial list to the National to the Senate. For me, these things should not be what APC should be engaged in presently. The Senate president, if he is guilty, I'm sure he's going to be removed. But one would have expected that the APC should manage its crisis better and provide good governance for Nigeria. But
is this really about the APC now? I know that, yeah, there's a lot of talk about it being political, which, of course, are a lot of side talk and probably true or probably not, but we don't know. But does the fact that it might be political take away from the fact that these allegations, if proved, are right and we shouldn't pursue the legality of all of that?
I think it's what I said, that one is happy that the rule of law is being pursued. One is happy that the number 3 man of the country can be brought on trial. You know, concerning the falseful declaration of assets. But anyone who says that this is not political, I think is probably not being aware of the shenanigans that surrounded the emergence of Senator Bukola Saraki, especially when we heard that Mr. President's body language was against the emergence of Bukola Saraki as the Senate President until today. Some say that there has been no official meeting, no official correspondence between the number 1 man and the number 3 man of the country. That is, there has been no correspondence between the executive arm and the legislative arm. So for me, I think the wider implications of it is a big problem. Yes, we want the rule of law. Yes, we want corrupt people to be brought to book, no matter who they are. But do we want that at the expense of governance? Do we want that at the expense of seriousness being applied to government? I think the majority of Nigerians would say no. We've just come from a bitter election period. We've had months and months of campaigns, you know, the Jonathan versus Buhari campaigns, and Nigeria is only now beginning to cool down. So one would expect that what APC would be focusing on now, you know, would actually be serious governance for Nigerians. I mean, it's not even a PDP versus APC thing. There's mostly been an APC versus APC thing all across the states. So I think Nigerians would want serious governance at this point in time.
But don't they run the